Hello and welcome to our tutorial. So this is sort of where we had gotten to so far. So if I press play here, we have our character walking forwards and backwards, and we can jump, and we have a health bar, and we have a lift which we can go up on, and we need to still parent our player to that for all our little skipping and jumping. And what we want to do is we want to in this tutorial, just looking at spawning our non-player character, and we want to look at how we would introduce that non-player character, so spawning them randomly into our game. So I'm going to start by adding in some spawn points, and then we're going to look at the script. But before I do that, the other thing I want to do is over here I'm going to create an empty, and I'm going to call this non-player character control. Now I could call it, I could change it to level control, so maybe we'll do that. And this is level 1, so we'll call it level 1 control. So this is just an empty, it has no physical attributes, and I'm going to put it in at 0, 0, 0. Its location is not important because it has no real impact on the game, but we're just going to store things on this object. And what we're going to store now is we're going to store this script here, so non-player character control. So I'm going to drag and drop that onto my level 1 control. So if I have audio or other objects that are non-object specific, like music, background music or something, I can place them on this object here. So if I want to spawn, there's numerous ways to do that, and there's lots of documentation on Unity on how to spawn. The particular method I'm going to use here is I'm going to get it to spawn at a specified interval in a random place. So the randomness in this will be location, but the randomness could easily be inferred a different way or implemented a different way. So let's go make another empty, and we'll take it out of that. We don't want it to be a child, so we'll call this spawn points. Okay, and we'll call this spawn points holder. And again, that's at 0, 0, 0. So this is just another empty. So inside this, I'm going to create an empty, and I'm going to call this spawn1. And let's just, for now, put in 3 spawn points, but I could have as many as I want. Spawn2, and then we'll add in another one, spawn3. And we want this to be a child of this, but not of the other one. Spawn3, although it wouldn't really matter if it was. Okay, and they're all at 0, 0, 0, so which is fine. So I'm going to take spawn1 here and turn on my movement here, and I'm going to just position this to be here. So in my level where I'm going to walk. And then my second one I'm going to place over here in this corridor, and then the third one I'm going to place further over here. So 3 points at which I could spawn. Now, I have no non-player character prefab. I have a prefab that's a bullet, but my non-player character actually exists within the game here, and he has all sorts of attributes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new prefab, and I'm going to call this non-player character type 1, because I may have lots of different ones. And I'm going to take this non-player character here and drag it into the prefab. And this non-player character here is it's got a box collider, but the script I'm going to use is going to implement it as a rigid body, so it has physics. So I'm going to go in here and go physics 2D and add a rigid body. There you go, so rigid body 2D. If I don't do that just because I had a script set up, it won't go in. It doesn't have to be a rigid body, it could just be a game object. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to delete this non-player character. Okay, so I'm going to go to my level 1 control here and look at this script. So this script, I have a last spawn, which is the time at which I last spawned. That should probably be a private variable. I don't need to see that here. This is my spawn rate, so it's set to spawn every 10 seconds. And now it's looking here for my non-player character. So I'm going to drag my prefab in here. And it's not letting me drag it in, so I'm going to click the little circle and see if I can select from a menu. And it's only giving me the option of selecting player 1. Which is not what I want. I do not want to instantiate the player. So let's see what's wrong here. If we can okay, so I think I'm not quite sure what I did there. I thought I had put on a rigid body 2D, but as I look at it here, it doesn't have a rigid body 2D in it, so it's therefore not going to be considered as an option to go in there. So rigid body 2D on my non-player character. Did I put a 2 on this? Rigid body 2D. Oh, anyway, so there it is there. I've got my rigid body 2D. So I go back to my level 1 control, and instead of dropping that in, hopefully I can drop that in. So here's my non-player character type 1. That's going to be instantiated. Now where is it going to be instantiated? Well, here I've got this little kind of drop down menu for spawn points, and I've got a number. So this number is basically what we have as an array. An array is basically a list, and it can be as long as we want. So we have 3 spawn points, so I'm going to type in 3. So there's my 3 spawn points, so I need to drop them in. So if I go back here to level 1 control, so I'm going to go, this is spawn point number 1, this is spawn point number 2, and this is spawn point number 3. And as I said, I could have as many as I wanted. And I'm going to press play. And we're going to wait for 10 seconds, so maybe I should make this a bit shorter, but we'll see 1 pop in. So we should get a non-player character pop in. There we go, so 1 has popped in. Now there's no edge collider over here, so let's change this spawn rate to say every 3 seconds. So another one's dropped in, and we've got 1 over here, 1 over here, and 1 on top here. So we can start to see, just when you see them stacked there, some of the sort of shortcomings of this method, which is if these guys don't move, which at the moment they're not set up to move, so we will eventually put in a non-player character that's going to move towards us and fire at us. But if the non-player character was a turret, for example, and you were just instantiating it, you could end up stacking them on top of each other. So this method really only works effectively when you've got a character that's going to spawn in and then move away from the spawn point, so that 10 seconds later, or whatever your spawn rate is, there's nothing directly underneath that spawn point. Or at least you're not duplicating your non-player character on top of itself. So let's have a quick look at the script and see how it works. So some of the code in this we've previously used in this script here, which was we were getting a rate of fire for our non-player character. So we'll have a very quick look. So we use this method again. We kind of go if time is bigger than last spawn plus spawn rate, and we've declared both of them as variables here, and we've said last spawn is time. That's at the very beginning, so it starts at 0, 0, and then we're updating that every time we spawn we kind of time stamp it, and then we have to add this number on. So if 60 seconds have passed in the game, then we go 60, sorry, this one here, 60 plus 10, so we have to wait till time gets to 70. So every 10 seconds it'll run this function here. And this function basically says I have an integer, and it's called spawn range, and this is the random function within Unity. So I'm going to go random.range, and I need to tell it what my range is. So my range is between 0 and spawn points.length. So up here I've said I've got a transform, so a moving position, and it's these two brackets here indicate it's an array. So an array is counted between 0 and the number that you put in. So in this instance here, I've put in 3. So it starts at 0, 1, 2, 3. So it's one of those 4 possibilities. 0, 1, 2. Sorry, 0, 1, 2. Actually is what it'll do. It won't actually get to, so 0, it'll count 0 as the first one, then 1, 2. So even though I have 3 items here, it'll go 0, 1, or 2. So that's what it's working on here. So it's trying to generate which one of those numbers am I going to use. And then down here we're saying instantiate the non-player character, which is a rigid body 2D. So instantiate it. And where will I instantiate it? So this is the object to be instantiated. Now we don't actually need that bit there. I'll leave it in for now. But if we were going to give this instantiated object velocity, so that's a hangover from that code came out of this for the bullet. But if we wanted to give our character velocity, we could add that in. But I can take that out. So we're saying add in the character. Now, where are we adding it in? We're adding it in at spawn point, at spawn range. So at 0, 1, or 2. So that's how it knows which location. And the same number will be put in here. So the rotation of that object as a rigid body 2D. So that's pretty much the code. So we're saying instantiate the object. And where do we instantiate it? At one of the spawn points. Which one? Well, this one. And how do we get that number? Well, we've asked it to randomly pick a number between 0 and the number of spawn points, which is determined over here in the inspector. So it's a size 3. So if we had more, if we had 7 here, then we'd have more, you know, empties or more objects, more transforms, if you know what I mean, to put in. And then it would generate a number between 0 and 7. But we shall leave it at 3 because that's all we have. So that's it. So it's not a terribly difficult addition to what we've already done, or it's not a terribly complex addition. So we're still using the mechanics of time. We're still using the same mechanics that we used when we instantiated the bullet. The only difference is we're having to generate a random number, and that random number acknowledges how many points we have in our array, and then we're instantiating at a spawn point as determined by that number. Okay, so not a terribly long tutorial, but we'll leave it at that for now.